The rain hadn't stopped in 2 days. It drummed softly against the window of the one-bedroom apartment, a dull percussion that echoed through the silence. The light in the room was dim, filtered through water-streaked glass and gray clouds, casting a blue haze over the cracked floor tiles and second-hand furniture. Ethan Cole sat at the small, unsteady kitchen table, staring at his cold cup of coffee. It was 6:43 a.m., and he hadn't slept. Again. The apartment was quiet except for the occasional creak of pipes and the soft hum of the refrigerator white noise that did little to comfort the restlessness inside him. He rubbed his hands together, not out of cold, but habit. Calloused fingers, rough from warehouse labor and the odd handyman job, trembled slightly. The silence mocked him. His phone sat face down on the table, screen cracked. Messages unread, bill reminders, job rejections, and the ghost of people who had long stopped checking in. 3 years ago, he was full of promise. A scholarship student at a decent state college, a decent GPA, a decent plan. Then life had ripped him in half like an old lottery ticket. First, his father died. A sudden heart attack that left him stunned and responsible for a mother slowly unraveling from grief. Then came the debt, the missed tuition payments, the dropout forms. One domino after another. Now, at 24, he was working 2 jobs that paid minimum wage, barely enough to cover rent, let alone the debts that gnawed at his name like termites. Every night he dreamed of more of freedom, of control, of a life where he could breathe without guilt. But every morning he woke up in the same rusted bed frame, surrounded by the same evidence of a life unfulfilled. Still, something in him refused to die. It wasn't pride, he'd long swallowed that. It wasn't hope either. It was necessity. Ethan was tired of watching life through fogged glass, tired of choosing between paying the electric bill or buying a new pair of work boots when the soles had split. He pushed away the coffee and stood up, stretching until his back cracked. Today was Monday, and Mondays were inventory days at the warehouse. He hated inventory, hated the dim overhead lights and the clipboard checklists, hated how it reminded him of what he used to be organized, precise, promising. But this Monday was different. Last night, while scrolling through job boards and YouTube motivation videos at 2 a.m., he'd stumbled on a video about financial independence, not the get-rich-quick nonsense. This was real. Saving, investing, building slowly, smartly. He'd watched it twice, then 3 times. He'd even taken notes. There had been a fire in his chest after that. Small, weak, but it had burned just enough to make him promise something to himself. He would not die like this. He would claw, crawl, and build his way out of this hole, even if it took him 10 years. Ethan tucked the notebook into his backpack, the one with his scribbled notes from last night, and locked the apartment door behind him. The hallway smelled of damp wood and old cigarettes, the kind of scent that clung to the walls like a curse. His boots squeaked faintly as he descended the stairs, raincoat tucked under one arm. The street outside glistened with fresh rain, puddles warping the reflection of flickering streetlights. The bus was late. It always was. He stood at the corner, hood pulled over his head, watching cars hiss by. Inside the notebook were 4 bullet points. Track every dollar. Cut all non-essentials. Start saving. Learn everything about money. Simple. Straightforward. Impossible? No, not impossible, just difficult. Ethan had done difficult before. By the time he reached the warehouse, his jeans were soaked at the cuffs. and cold bit at his fingers. His supervisor, Marka paunchy man with a permanent frown and the energy of a broken vending machine, handed him a clipboard and nodded to the back. Zone C needs double counting. We had a discrepancy. Ethan nodded without complaint. That was one of the things they liked about him. Quiet, hard-working, invisible. As he made his way through the aisles of stacked boxes and forklift groans, he ran the numbers in his head. He made $14.25 an hour. After taxes and after the deduction for health insurance, he cleared about $1,700 a month. Rent took $850. Utilities another $200. That left $650. Groceries, phone, bus fare, that was most of the rest. But not all of it. If he could even squirrel away $50 a month, he could begin something. He could open a savings account, an emergency fund, a micro-investment account, anything. He would start small, but start strong. As the day wore on, the dull rhythm of the job gave him room to think. Every number he counted, every box he lifted, was fuel not for his body, but for his drive. He wasn't just stocking shelves or logging serial numbers anymore. He was buying himself time, investing in his future. With every movement, he imagined himself chipping away at the wall between him and freedom. At lunch, he sat outside under a steel overhang with his peanut butter sandwich. Rain trickled from the roof in rhythmic drops. He pulled out his notebook, flipping to a clean page. Side hustles, he wrote at the top. Then a list. Freelance writing, DoorDash or Uber. Sell on eBay, digital products. He'd never thought like this before, not seriously. He had always assumed that the best he could hope for was survival. But what if he could do more? What if he could win? The wind picked up, cold and biting, but he didn't feel it. For the first time in years, Ethan had a sense of direction, not just the kind that got him through the day, but the kind that pointed toward a future he could build with his own hands. And he would build it. $1, one idea, one broken piece at a time. That night, after his second shift at the gas station, Ethan trudged home under a cracked umbrella, feet aching and eyes burning. The lights in the apartment flickered when he flipped the switch, and he made a mental note to call the landlord again. But he didn't sit down. Not yet. He dropped his bag, kicked off his boots, and went straight to the rickety desk in the corner. It was barely more than a slab of wood over 2 crates, but it was now sacred ground. He opened his notebook and turned to the page titled Budget. Every expense he could think of, he wrote down. Rent, electric, groceries, phone, bus, soap, razors, coffee-eno, cut that. No more $3 coffee from the gas station machine. He would brew at home or go without. Then came income. 2 paychecks every month, usually spaced out unevenly. $14.25 at the warehouse. $13.7. $5 at the station. After taxes, he calculated a lean dollar, $1,700, if the hours held steady. Sometimes they didn't. But he'd budget for the low end and treat anything extra like a blessing. He drew a line under it all and circled the number, $67.33 possible monthly savings. It wasn't much, but it was a crack of light in a long, dark tunnel. At 1:12 a.m., he finally allowed himself to sit on the mattress. His back ached and his palms stung from lifting crates all day, but he felt strangely awake, alive. The fire inside him, weak as it was, hadn't gone out. If anything, it was stronger. Tomorrow, he'd open a high-yield savings account. He'd start watching finance videos again. Maybe even check out that free online course about budgeting. One step, then another. He lay back and stared at the cracked ceiling. He didn't pray anymore. Not really. But he whispered into the silence, as if the walls might carry his words somewhere better. "I'm coming for it," he said softly. "My life. My freedom. I'm coming." Sleep came fast and dreamless. The next week passed in a blur of motion. Warehouse in the morning, gas station at night, 30 minutes between to eat, scribble in his notebook, or study on his phone. The bus rides became his classroom. He listened to audiobooks on investing, read blog posts about financial freedom, jotted down ideas in the margins of receipts. He learned about compound interest, Roth IRAs, passive income, the 50 divided by 30 divided by 20 rule. Words that once sounded like a foreign language now felt like tools sharp, powerful, promising. He began tracking every cent. Every time he thought of buying something snacks, a cheap hoodie, a new phone charger, he stopped and asked himself, "Do I want this? Or do I want freedom?" And every time he chose freedom. No one else noticed the change. He still looked like the same exhausted, underpaid kid. Still wore the same torn jacket. Still had oil stains on his jeans. But inside, something had shifted. Ethan wasn't just working. He was building a way out. The next morning, Ethan woke up before his alarm. For once, he wasn't dreading the day. The air felt different charged, like a storm on the horizon, but not a destructive one, a cleansing one. Something was shifting. In him, he dressed for work like always steel-toe boots, faded jeans, the same threadbare hoodie, but his steps felt lighter. The warehouse wasn't his prison anymore. It was his platform, temporary, necessary, but not permanent. On his way out, he paused at the front door. His old notebook sat on the counter, dog-eared and smudged with ink and grease from all the late-night scribbles. He picked it up, flipped to the back page, and added one final line beneath all the chaos of budgets and broken math. "I am not my past. I am not my pain. I am becoming." Then he closed the notebook, slid it into his backpack, and stepped into the cold morning light. The world hadn't changed overnight, but he had, and that was enough to begin again.